Hi, hi, good evening, everyone, and welcome to. Hi, good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Money with Friends. Every Wednesday, we get the privilege to come to you to share some really pertinent information about money, life, and we say everything else because money encompasses everything. So, on tonight's show, we have a great topic. We said that understanding human needs is important because humans have many needs and understanding what those needs are and having the opportunity to accomplish each level is essential to reaching our personal best, our true purpose in life. So tonight's topic is why Maslow's hierarchy of needs matters. Why does it matter to understand this theory of hierarchy of needs? Because many times we talk about personal responsibilities, right? Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? Or many times too, we overlooked that in order for you to go to the next level in life, you need to have had an opportunity to experience the first level, the basic level. So on tonight's show, we're gonna discuss this and we're gonna have an opportunity for you to participate. So yes, we would like for you to tag, share, and let your friends know about this show and about how every Wednesday we are here having really great conversations that we believe are relevant, timely, and pertinent that for you and your family. So without further ado, I would like to welcome my guests, my two guests who are on the show tonight. I'll give them an opportunity to quickly say hello before we dive into this important conversation as to why Maslow's hierarchy of needs matters. Let's welcome Ivelisse. You can go ahead and introduce yourself first.
Hi, my name is Ivelisse Caraballo. I am a founding member and the current director for C-Plan. C-Plan's parent-led organization on education advocacy, creating parent leaders.
Yes, and Joe, go ahead.
Hello, everybody. It's good to be on tonight. Thank you for the invitation. My name is Angel Cosme. I am a community organizer with Brockton Interfaith Community and also an educator in the community of Brockton. Happy to be here tonight.
Yes, happy. I'm so glad to have you all. I think, who do we have in common? Of course, Maggie Pinney. She's a mutual friend.
Yes.
Our mutual friend, and we were having a really in-depth conversation about community organizing and some of social challenges that we are experiencing because we are all interested in social justice. We do social justice work, and we got into this theory of Maslow hierarchy of needs because we know that no one can become their best self. You cannot become your best self if you have not had an opportunity to go through what Maslow refers to as the 5-tier of it's the human model, right? The 5-tier human model, which is the hierarchy of needs, or sometimes referred to as the Maslow's pyramid of needs. So we had posted something online, a picture, and so I would like to start with the first question, and definitely, we want to give folks who are not familiar with this theory, let them know a little bit about, what is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And why is it important? Why is it an important theory for everyone to understand? Why don't you go ahead, Angel?
So I studied psychology in college. I'm a psychology major, got my bachelor's in psychology, and I remember learning about Maslow's hierarchy. And essentially what it is it's human beings, all of us, share some basic commonalities of things that we need in order to survive, in order to thrive, in order to become our best selves. And it starts with like very basic things like, housing, food, shelter, those kind of things that make us feel secure. And then once those things are established, we're then able to become our authentic selves. And I know we'll get into it as we discuss each of the different levels, but that's just a very basic explanation. And there are some critiques as well of the hierarchy, of course, with any theory. But essentially, we need the basics. We need financial security. We need a roof over our heads. We need to feel like we belong and that we're accepted in society. for us to then just feel like we're going to live the rest of our lives in some type of contentment. But it's not always that neat.
Yeah, I think it's so important. Someone who might, someone who might be watching right now might say, this is a show about money and finance. What would you want to discuss such topic? But for us, like we said on this show, that money encompasses everything. So in my conversation with Maggie, we say like we are encouraging, my shows are always like education matters, right? Community matters. We talk about like legacy matters. But how do you get to those levels of even thinking about legacy, community education, if your basic needs are not being met? So Maslow, who was a Russian, right, Jewish Russian psychologist, his first name is Abraham, right, Abraham Maslow. And this theory came out, was first published in 1943 in the psychology journals, 1943. And basically, as you were saying, Angel, like there are five needs that we all, levels of needs. And he said the first four are called deficiency needs. Those needs have to be met. If they are deficient, listen, you're not gonna get to the top need, which is the self-actualization need. So we're gonna talk about that. So why don't we start with you, Evelise? We talked about like the fact that you cannot focus on education, and I know your organization is all. So what is the first need? The very first need, like in terms of like the Maslow hierarchy of needs. What is the first tier?
The first tier is the basic essentials that Angel mentioned in terms of food stability, financial stability, housing stability, mental wellness. There are so many essential that kind of builds the foundation to everything else you do. Studies have shown that if a child is hungry, if a child is dealing with trauma at home, if a child is lacks stability, they are unable to go to school and learn. The reason why there might be some people that are opposed to this is because there's an exception to every rule. There are some people that are resilient, some people that might have other supports that make up for what they're lacking. But at the end of the day, the reality is that if a child does not have stability, their ability to learn is decreased significantly. And so in an educational setting, the child needs to have all of those basic essentials in order for them to then thrive.
Yeah, if you come into work, if you come into school hungry, because they call them, the first tier is the physiological needs. Your physiological needs. If you're hungry, if you don't have water, if you don't have heat at the house, if you're struggling to stay in your home because of displacement and high rents, and you are not able, you constantly having to deal with evictions, you cannot. So that's why in the work that I do every day, we say housing is a human right. And I know, Angel, you focus on mutual aids. So so why is it important, like for Angel, in terms of like the basic needs, that government officials and people who are in government take the time? We talk about leadership matters, right? When you're a leader, you're trying to think about how do you best lead your people. Is it this theory? Is it a theory that you feel like if most government officials or elected officials are not thinking about it, they should be thinking about it? Because in order for them to effectively do the work that they need to do, this type of mindset ought to be in place.
Yeah, and I think I think the government does some good in these areas. They do provide supports, benefits, programs to residents of this country. The difference, I think, specifically with mutual aid is sort of a reliance on one another. And I think that's the key difference, where yes, the government can provide assistance and that's needed, but we tend to have a scarcity mentality, right? Or a hoarding type of mentality where I'm just going to make sure that I'm good, me and mine's are good, and make sure that I have enough food and that I live in a nice house and all those things, right? I'm speaking generally. And then we forget about our neighbor. Correct. We forget about the person who doesn't have as much as we have. And mutual aid has been around. It's not a new thing. It's basically neighbor supporting neighbor. If I have a vehicle and you need a ride, I can give you a ride. If I have a little bit of extra money this week and you are short on your rent, I could maybe help you. And then if my other neighbors did that as well, then you would be able to get assistance that is in addition to what the government can provide. So if more community members became mindful, willing to share, and not really think of scarcity, but think of abundance, then we would be able to support each other more, and then eventually get to, to the hierarchy where we could be then self-actualized, which I don't know if any of us ever reached that, right? Because life is such a journey, and we go through ups and downs. And I personally have needed a lot of help in my life, and people have given me a hand. So we need to do more of that.
Yeah, we need to do more to, we talk about community matters. I'm huge when it comes to, being part of my community and reaching out and helping other people. But I also believe that it's so important that policies and welfare system that is necessary, like in terms of the housing and the food and the shelter, and access to heat, access to basic needs. Those things are being met by government, or having the second set of needs is the safety needs the next year. So we talk about that job safety, right? How important it is, and again going back to policies and just having jobs available so that folks are able to meet those needs. Because again, we are reaching towards self-actualization. How can you blame a community of people and point fingers at them and say you all are this and that when they don't even have jobs to go to on a daily basis? Talk about that, Ivelisse.
So first, I just want to touch a little bit on what Angel said about whether or not we will all reach self-actualization. I want to define that because not everyone's familiar with the term, right? So
yeah, well, actually, we're gonna get to that point. We just wanted to. We're gonna get to that point. Yeah.
Okay.
No, yeah.
All right. Okay. So then that's the perfect segue to about like the day-to-day on how we work. Is that what we believe is that it is important to teach people how to fish as opposed to giving people the fish, right? As when it comes to these systems in place, these direct services for folks, they are very much needed. But what's even equally important is to teach folks how to be self-sustainable so that these supports and systems are not needed as often. And so that one of the things that C-Plan really believes in is how do we educate folks on reaching each and every level of this hierarchy to be able to then allow them to reach that self-actualization independently, because now they've been educated and trained on how to do that. Right. So I just want to speak to like the day-to-day in terms of these systems that are in place, that it's very, very important to educate folks outside of an educational setting even, right? It's beyond just school, but outside of an educational space where folks are able to learn how to attain these very essential needs.
Yeah. So on your way to self-actualization, which is the end game, right? We'll get to that. We definitely have to have our basic needs met, right? And also we get to the point where being self-sufficient. And the way you can do that is by being employable, right? When you have your own money, when you have your own job and you're able to pay the bills and you're able to take care of yourself, oh my gosh, it does elevate. It does take you to a different level. But we said the third tier, right? The third tier is the idea of love, right? Love, belonging, right? So we were offline, we were talking about how community, how can you bring people and get them to get involved in community and even share love and give love to community if, again, those first needs are basic physiological needs and security needs are not being met? Because we were saying, Angel, sometimes we like to ask community members to get involved, but they're busy working 2-3 jobs because they don't have security. And they're busy working 2-3 jobs because they have to pay high rents and facing displacement and foreclosure and all that. Can you talk a little bit about that? How sometimes the lack of love we see in our community and community engagement is because those needs are not being met?
I'm glad you mentioned that. I think I'm safe to say, I know I am. I know you both. I know this about both of you. Is we're individuals of faith, right? We believe in a higher power. We believe in a God, and Scripture talks about loving your neighbor, right? I have to mention that while it's extremely important to teach people how to fish, right? There are, and I know we all know this here, there's structural inequalities, right, that exist in society.
Yes.
Things like racism, unequal educational systems,
Mhm.
right? Like if you live in an affluent neighborhood, your schools are going to be better funded than communities that are not, right? So you're already off to a bad start, if you will. So we have to address these human-made inequalities that keep us hindered, right? And I think the overarching way to do that is love, and it's not the mushy romantic love. It's the love of the recognition that you and I have are spiritual beings living a physical existence, and that we have to care for one another. But it's also I'll end here. Sometimes even having an education and being employable is not even enough, right? Like I have a master's degree, and I've struggled, in my life very recently, and I've needed help. And so it's important that we lend a hand to one another during those times, but also that we also agitate each other when we could do a little bit more for ourselves, right? When we don't make excuses, and we say we're gonna achieve the best that we can for ourselves, but sometimes we need that hand, and I think the foundation of that is definitely love.
Yeah, the family and community suffers because of poverty and a lack of security. And I do believe that if you, as a community, as a country, has not done anything really to eradicate poverty and eradicate systemic issues that are holding people back on a day-to-day basis, preventing them from being able to meet or receive access to basic needs, i.e. the physiological needs of being able to eat, have a place to live, be warm in this weather here in New England, and also have job security, feeling like, you are using your talents, your God-given talents to contribute to society. When folks have not been able to do that, love is not something they can do. But in terms of school, like you deal with school-age kids, and your program is all about helping in the education realm. How can a child come to school and be the very best and excel, and also be a great community member as a student and respecting teachers, if they are at home dealing with chaos because mom is facing eviction and the house is cold and they haven't had anything to eat, healthy food to eat? Explain why this understanding of the hierarchy of needs is important in order for us to not blame the individuals, but look at the systemic issues that are keeping them from achieving those goals.
We definitely have to look into the systemic issues that create these inequalities. I hate that people that are often underrepresented and marginalized are looked at through a deficit lens, almost as if they have no good qualities to offer in certain spaces, right? I think that one of the things that I like to often challenge is it's the fact that when we think about school and children don't have a sense of belonging, specifically children of other races and ethnic backgrounds, like children of students of color, there's no sense of belonging in schools for them because the dominant culture is overpowering the curriculum and the school culture and climate, including the staff that they are taught by, right? And so there's no connection between them and the institution that they're in order for them to feel like I belong here. I see myself reflected in the curriculum, in the people that I'm around, in the culture of the space that I'm in, and lacking that sense of belonging is really disturbing. It happens to all of us, even as adults, when we want to join, that book club or certain groups and clubs. It is because we're searching for that sense of belonging, right? And we often find it, but our children don't have those options. So if we can't offer it for them in a school setting, then where do they get these? Where do they get the sense of belonging? Which is why one of the things we advocate for is diversifying the curriculum, the school culture, climate, and the staff. Not just staff, but teachers specifically. Studies have shown that when all students have a Black teacher, regardless of their own race, when they have a Black teacher, they perform in much higher rates. That's not Iveli saying it. That's the numbers that say it, and numbers don't lie,
Correct.
right? And so I think that when it comes to the belonging piece in an educational setting, if students don't have that, it's going to be highly difficult for them to move forward, because we as adults know that when you don't feel good, you don't do good.
Correct. Yeah, we talked about on the show inclusion and diversity. Inclusion and diversities matter. Matters is very important to feel like you are being represented. So all that is important, because as we are trying to create a society, if that's the objective, we want a society that is healthy, a society that is achieving its max, being able to self-actualize, being able to be your very best self and live in your purpose. There are certain things that we must do first thing first. And I think we had a show last year that talks about, first thing first, with the Stephen Covey book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. But the idea of being able to meet your physiological needs, belonging, you cannot even, we were talking about it, Angel, since you're a community organizer, again, the idea of telling folks, come out of your home, come and participate and be a member of society and contribute to society, and also love your thy neighbors. You just mentioned that. Like in the spiritual realm, they said, love your neighbor. But also, someone who's very committed to faith, do you believe that sometimes church or the idea of church, like you go to those environments, your faith matters? I had a show about that. It's important to have faith. But can you have so much faith that you forget that you need to fight for these physiological needs and safety needs? Because sometimes I tell you, I kid you not, I'm a believer, and you go to church and they're like, let's pray about everything. There was a situation that I was going through, and I kept praying until I found a community of people who were fighters, and they decided to teach me and show me how to fight. So how can we love our neighbors by not just loving them, quote unquote, the religious way only, but also fight with them?
Gabrielle, it reminds me of the scripture that says, I'm probably butchering it, but like faith without action is dead.
Correct.
Right. So yes, we have to have faith, and by no means am I professing to be this spiritual person. I've been doing a lot of spiritual inner work, reading a bunch of different texts from all different walks of faith, trying to figure out this thing that is higher than all of us, right? But there's a foundational element to it, where we do have to pray, absolutely. In organizing, one of the challenges that we would face when we're trying to work with a congregation is some congregations are willing to have their congregants, their church members, do organizing work of social justice, while others are more of focused on the afterlife. Correct. These are conversations that I've had, that there's no time to organize for immigrants, for example, when this particular priest is focused on trying to get people to heaven, is what he told me, right? So sometimes you meet that kind of resistance. I think you need to meet people where they're at, right? And one of the most important things in organizing is to have people that are most affected, right? So if you have someone who's looking for housing and is on the verge of eviction, they need to be the spokesperson, right? If you have someone who's undocumented, they need to be the spokesperson on the forefront, leading the causes that of social justice. I don't know if you know this, Gabrielle, and it's probably the first time I'm saying it publicly, but I am transitioning from community organizing into education. I'm going to be teaching at West Middle School in the special education department. I'm a special education licensed teacher and a history teacher. The reason I mentioned that is that it reminds me of how differently we learn, right? That there's different styles of learning, and there's no one size fits all. So as human beings, appreciating the diversity that we all bring, we need to think outside the box and really try to meet the needs of the individual based on how they're presenting, where they are in this journey of life, right? With ups and downs, and it doesn't discriminate. And then we also got to remember, lastly, that we just coming out of a pandemic, right? Which has affected the way that we do things dramatically. So we need to be a little bit of flexible in the way that we're doing things, and ultimately support one another through the trials.
Yeah. And the sad
Can I-
part, go ahead, Evelyn.
I want to speak to the religious component of it as well. I think that one of the reasons why people might be opposed to it is because they're not thinking about it in a different lens as they're fighting evil. The Bible tells us that if we feed a person that is hungry, we are feeding Jesus. If
Correct.
we house a person that is homeless, we are housing Jesus. And if we clothe somebody who does not, you get the point, right?
Right.
And so a lot of this work that we're doing is just that, is doing those things for our neighbors. And when we have to do community organizing to fight systemic inequities, what we're really fighting is the evil that opposes what we have been instructed to do as people of faith.
Correct.
And so I think that it really words really do matter, and the way that we frame certain things, I think that would be the connection to make between why we do the work that we do and how we as people of faith can continue the work that the Lord has instructed us to do in a way that some people might not find correct. However, there's a lot of fighters in the Bible. There's a lot of fighters.
I do believe that as a Christian, I do believe that Jesus was a community organizer, because everywhere he went, he organized the community and helped them, not only fed them, right, the 5,000 plus, but also took care of their physiological needs. You have to take care of people's physiological needs. It's not enough to give them the Jesus of praying every single day for the afterlife and not teach them how to stand up and ask and demand that the structure that we live in, that we are part of, gives us opportunities to meet those needs, physiological and safety, and also so that we can get to the point of loving our neighbors. Because the love is not just like you said, goo goo gaga, oh, I love my neighbors. Is it to action? I mean, are you able to serve your neighbors? If you're not able to serve your neighbor because you are hurting yourself, then you know what? Someone, like you say, is violence. Someone is holding you from doing that. You need to stand up and find out why. So because again, the fourth need, right? The esteem, right? It's so important that we all get to the point where we feel like, oh my gosh, I've accomplished. I'm there. I'm doing something for myself, right? How important is it when you get to the point, like you're gonna go into teaching and also as a community person, and even for yourself. I remember you said that you were doing odd jobs here and there, but you decided that you were gonna go back to school and get an education. How important is that level? When people are able to invest in themselves and educate themselves.
Yeah. I mean, we talked a lot about religion and love, and I don't want to exclude any other faiths, right? Because we may lean Christian or be Christian, but there's Muslim, Jewish brothers and sisters, and Buddhists and other individuals. And I think what I've learned is that there's a commonality that we're all human, right? And we're all trying to figure out something greater than ourselves. And if regardless of what separates us, gender, socioeconomic status, education levels, culture, ethnicity, we all have that soul, right? That like if that little voice in your head when you close your eyes that's talking, that you can't see but it's very real. We all have that. That's our soul. And that doesn't have a physical makeup. And if you could see into the eyes of a fellow human being, as mushy and corny as that may sound, I ultimately believe, if I had to summarize my spirituality, is God is love. It's this life force that every living thing has. And when you don't intend to harm somebody, and just like there's love, there's evil, right? So we don't have to be naive, because we know that there's a very strong force of evil. But when you can appreciate a human being just for being human, and then who are we to judge? I've also never said this publicly, right? But I've had struggles in my life with like alcohol, right? And I'm a person in recovery, and I'm proud of that. But who am I to judge somebody because they're homeless, or because they're out in the street, or because they're doing drugs, right? I've had my personal battles. and I don't want anybody to judge me. And if you want to judge me, that's fine. But I know my worth, and I know the worth in the quote unquote least amongst us. And we need to be able to support that person, because you never know when that person is going to be you. And that's the truth. And I think, again, the framing of it is just seeing the humanity in one another.
Yeah, I think it's so important to have that love, and you get to the point where you have so much love for yourself, that self-respect and esteem for yourself, that you don't judge other people after having gone through so much in life, right? If you are I think if you're 25 and older, you should have had enough experience to not judge other people, because you know that life will happen to anybody. It doesn't matter if you have 20 college degrees and been anywhere in the world, you still can go through hardships, whether it is a substance abuse or just like financial hardships. So important to get to that level of self-respect and self-acceptance, because when you get to that level, what happens, Eloise, I'm calling it, sorry, Evelise, what happened when you get to the point where you love yourself so much and you feel like you've accomplished enough? You've done everything that you pour into your life. You are seeing fruits, and you can be very proud of yourself and your community.
I like to look at this esteem level when you've been able to master something, when you've identified your strengths, your abilities, and when you've been able to master it in a way where it serves a purpose in your life and in those around you, right? I think that most of us who are professionals, we know that when we feel good about what we're doing, it really does increase the quality of whatever we're offering, whatever it is that our work is, right? That's the same thing for students. When you speak life into them and you let them know they're doing great, they try harder every time because they want to continue to meet that standard, right? And so this self-esteem, when you feel better, you do better. It's all about really mastering something and feeling like you serve a purpose in this world. So for me, that is the esteem component of this hierarchy, is being able to find that mastery and purpose. I also want to backpedal a little bit about back to the loved one for a quick second, because it's hard for me to wrap my mind around why people don't want to look out for their neighbor when we are only as good as our neighbor, figuratively and literally speaking, right? So, if my neighbor works overnight and she's not able to take care of kids overnight, so they're running around in the streets getting into trouble, and those kids become a menace to society, that impacts my kids and my quality of life. You know what I'm saying? As well as if they don't take care of their property, that's going to lower or keep my property value low. And I can go and give you millions of more examples, but I think you get the point that we are only as good as our neighbors are. So I can't wrap my mind around why people don't want to love their neighbor and do for their neighbor if it benefits them. There's a sense of ethical egoism within taking care of your neighbors. Also, another thing is that if everybody had this mentality of taking care of others, then all of us would have so many people taking care of us. But when everybody only worries about self, there's only one person that's always worried about you.
Correct.
Right? Right. So it's hard for me to wrap my mind around why people might be opposed to loving their neighbor or taking care of their neighbor.
Evelise, but I think going back again to the topic of the hour, topic of the day, is the hierarchy of needs, and I do believe that how can you get to the not even self-actualization, the level of loving your neighbors, right? When you are struggling again and you feeling like you're not worth it, you're not being able to meet your physiology. Because I think I remember someone saying to me, like, some people are malnourished, and the idea of being malnourished, not having enough good food to eat, could actually affect the way you think, the way you see the world, the way you see other people. When you are constantly dealing with the fear of eviction, the fear of being displaced, and the fear of losing your job and not having that security, how can you even think beyond that? So I think sometimes it's not about not wanting to love, it's the inability to love, because again, the first 4 levels of the hierarchy is deficiency.
Yeah.
The D word, deficiency. Yeah.
Right. Well, I would say this. I know that it's hard when you're dealing with a lot of instabilities. I've been there myself. I don't come from a privileged background at all whatsoever. I've been homeless myself. I've struggled with different instabilities in my own life. I think that when you're going through those types of traumatic experiences, it's hard to think logically. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the logic into how you can take care of others when you yourself are dealing with certain things. It's because not everybody's struggling with the same things. I might be struggling with making a full meal in my home because I'm missing the beans, right? My neighbor might have the beans and is missing the rice. Right? Or I might be struggling with something. We all have gifts and we all have things that we offer, right? If we think of togetherness, if we think of community, if we bring back that it takes a village, if we bring that back, whatever one of us is lacking, the other one has, we are much stronger together than we would ever be apart. And so as we are lacking in things and we are able to trust in others that whatever I'm lacking, you can offer and vice versa, right? Then we will never go without. At least that's how I think of it, because we all have, we were created to need each other, and we all have what other people are missing.
Yeah, correct. And that's why, Angel, community matters. When you go into a hardship, don't sit at home, beating yourself up to the point of suicidal, because we've known recently I shared that this young single mom committed suicide. I know somebody in Somerville who committed suicide because they were struggling to find a job. Whereas there's Evelise right now looking for a community organizer. This person could have been a great community organizer because he did not do the networking that he needed to do. We talked about that last week, how important it is for your job search matters, how to do it effectively. So again, I would applaud you. Yes, Evelise, you cannot fight. You cannot stand on your own, right, Angel? You need community in order for you to go through these levels.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And there's a young man, a famous young man, I forget his name, forgive me, who just recently, he was 40 years old, committed suicide. I think he was a dancer.
Stitch.
Stitch.
Yeah,
Was it Stitch? He was the
I
DJ
found,
for the Ellen show.
Yep.
Wow, I just heard about his passing today. I didn't know he had committed suicide.
Yes. And so check in on people. I think part of that is that we have this tendency, right? Our egos. I'm learning a lot about egos, right? My ego. And like our tendency to like project that we're okay, that we don't need any help, right? And then we also have like the societal thing where we say to each other, hey, how are you doing? And your natural tendency is to say, I'm doing good. But the person should ask you again, how are you doing? How are you really doing? What's really going on? Right. And then when you feel like you could be vulnerable around people and say, you know what, the truth is, I'm financially burdened. I'm going through a recent relationship breakup. I'm in the court system for X, Y, and Z. My boss has given me a hard time. When we get to the realness, when we could be real and vulnerable, then maybe we can get the help and the support that we can then start to build into this hierarchy. But so that's a personal responsibility on you, on the listener, on me, on everyone, to just be real with where you're at in life, but also for us who are doing okay at the moment, right? To then reach out to people and show compassion, which is different than empathy. I think it's higher than empathy. Empathy is like you can relate to them, but compassion is, I want to relieve you in some way of the pain that you're experiencing. Can I lend you some money? Can I give you that ride? And again, not to plug in because it's not the solution end all, but mutual aid is designed to be that for each other. And mutual aid could be created in any community. It's not just in Brockton. If you live in New York, if you live in another country, it's basically just, listen, I have a little bit extra this time. I can help you. We need to do better at helping each other because, like Evelise said, it takes a village.
It takes a village. Going back to this young man who I believe he was only 40 years old.
40. And it was Twitch, not Stitch. Sorry, Twitch.
Okay.
Twitch. That's his name.
Apologies.
It's sad because that I was at an appointment and this person who was having conversation with me, I call it conversation, said to me, was insinuating or basically emphatically saying that you've never gone through anything. Look how effective you've been at work. Look how effective you've been at this and that. And basically this person was saying like, because I looked like everything was fine, then I'd never gone through the stress and the anxiety and the depression that I had mentioned, that I was saying that I had gone through. Because you know what, you could look the part, but at night, you know, he was found in his, hotel bathroom at night, late, early in the morning, when you cannot sleep because you go into a situation that you feel like is insurmountable. You're trying to overcome this issue and it seems like it's relentless. So yeah, it's definitely important, like Angel, to find community, because I know for me, having had the opportunity to find community has relieved so much that I was carrying on my own. You cannot carry on your own. You need to find community, because shame, right? Do you find that part of the reason why esteem is a challenge to get to that point? Because if you have not been able to really accomplish things in your life, or you are fighting against a system that's really trying to hold you back, shame is one of the tactics that's being used. I don't know what the situation was with this man, but I know the young man in Somerville, he was ashamed of the fact that he had the college degrees, he had experience, and yet he couldn't find a job. He was struggling to find a job. So why is it important to leave your shame outside of the door and not carry that with you and really open up to get help, support?
Really quickly, one of the reasons, if you really know me, you probably know my struggles in life, right? And I'm a good person. I love my community, but I've also gone through my share of struggles. And the reason I talk publicly about them, the reason that I tell the people that are close to me how I'm really doing, and the challenges and the things that I've overcome, is because maybe you're going through it too. And maybe by me saying what I said, you could find some strength or some hope or an ear, someone to talk to when life gets so out of control. And again, like, we just came from a pandemic. You never know. Like, people die all the time. I lost my sister not even a year ago. Life is too precious to not be, first of all, concerned about your well-being. You're no good to anyone else unless you love yourself enough to want to get better and to get the help that you need.
Yeah, definitely. Because at the end of the day, Evelise, you were gonna talk about it earlier. Once you've had your physiological needs met, you've had safety, you've been able to work as a collective, as a community, to fight for your safety, the job security, right? And being able to have, accomplish the sense of belonging, right? And love in your community, and knowing that you are here, you are this team, you are important, and your community is important to you. At the end of the day, we always want to get to the point where we are self-actualized. So talk about, you are going to mention, like, why is it possible to become self-actualized?
Yeah.
The work it takes to get there.
Yeah. I wanted to respond to Angel about whether or not we would ever get there, because self-actualization is living according to reaching your full potential, right? After you've mastered something, you have a purpose, it's living within that space where you've reached your potential. With Angel, the reason why he's asking, like, do we ever get there, is because for those of us who have a growth mentality, that full potential continues to go up, right? And but it's okay. It doesn't mean you haven't reached self-actualization. It just means that that's going to continue to look different as you continue to evolve as a person. And I only say that because I want to restore some of the hope. You know what I mean, Angel? I wanted to restore some of the hope. Yes, we do get there, and it's going to probably look different as the time goes. And so I think that this is why it's important to have all of those other needs for you to finally feel like, wow, I'm living the quality of life and in my purpose in a way that I feel good about myself, right? In terms of like the shame that you speak of, shame is really a matter of perspective. It depends on who's looking at it. So that person felt, somebody led that person to believe that you have to have a certain amount of something by a certain age after, it's almost like a pathway where people say, this is what you should have accomplished by this age, and so on and so forth. Everybody's path and destiny looks different. And
Mhm.
so I wish I would have had a conversation with this person prior to, because they were trying to live by somebody else's standards or somebody else's perspective, right? But reaching self-actualization has nothing to do with anyone but you.
Correct.
It's not
And
about
so,
keeping up with the Joneses, right?
Yeah.
yes,
Yep.
Getting to the point where you, well, I call it the promised land because it's promised, because at the end of the day, it does give you a sense of, purpose. I wouldn't be doing this show if I wasn't there, because you have to have a sense of purpose and wanted to give back, because the good book, to whom much is given, much is required. And I've heard my mother say it over and over again, it is more blessed to give than to receive. Like but in order for you to get to that point, you need to have you need to have received something, like the basic physiological needs. If I'm struggling to pay bills and I'm fighting three jobs to pay an apartment, it's very hard for me to stop and think about giving back. Yes, it's possible, because again, you had mentioned, let's look at community to see who has what, and we can work together. But in order for us to get to that promised land, we really have to look at those barriers that are keeping us there, keeping us from getting there. And if you are someone who's interested in becoming self-actualized, you have to be engaged. You have to get involved in standing against barriers that are holding you and your community. Again, you mentioned Evelise. You have to think you are as good as your neighbor. You are as good as your neighbor. It's not about you only. This is not magical. It's not magical. Work is required. So what do you have to say lastly, Angel? I would like to hear your final thoughts, because
Really,
we do have to say goodbye. But yeah, what do you
sure.
have to say about
Really,
this topic here?
yes, really quickly. I just kind of to leave people in hope, right? Yes, we need food, and we may not be able to have like a gourmet meal every day, but if we eat healthy, if we just eat that day, then
Yeah.
we're blessed. We may not be able to live in a mansion, but if you have a roof over your head, right, then you're blessed. You may not have the best job, but you have some income, right? So to me, what I've learned, and I'm probably never going to be rich, and I'm okay with that unless my son blows up, which is a very strong potential. But I'm content. I'm content with just life, good friends, good conversations, safety, all of those things. That to me means more than those material things, right? Living a spiritual life, finding out things about myself, improving myself. That's what I'm content with. So, we I don't want to leave folks thinking that you have to have the best of everything. If you can appreciate the simplicity in life, I think that's actually better in some cases. So, but lean on each other. And then if you're struggling, ask for help, because we can't do this alone.
Yeah, Evelyn, you mentioned, representation matters. Very important to have students seeing people who reflect them, who look like them. But, the reason why it's also important, because I know in my community, people sometimes, some of the folks would say, you know what, these group of people, i.e. the white folks, they're the ones, they're the angels who will always save you. They'll always stand up and help you, because somehow they're innately born like that. And you over here, especially people in the community, they'll be like, oh yeah, I will never go and get help from this group of people, because they'll never have anything to offer me. So again, going back to the hierarchy of needs, you have people who have been given their basic needs, all their needs have been met. Of course, they're self-actualized. And they don't look like us. And because they don't look like us, they're self-actualized. We think the reason why they're giving back is because they don't look like us. When the truth of the matter is, because they've been self-actualized, and that community that you're putting down hasn't been given the privilege and the opportunity to be self-actualized, how can they be the same? So as someone who works in education and representation matters, please say your final piece.
Yes, the very reason why I do the work that I do, and I actually introduced this theory to all of the parents in all of our workshops. The very reason I do this is because I feel like if we think of the whole child, meaning that we are meeting the needs of the whole child in this hierarchy of needs, that we will produce better adults that don't require as much help as support. We're going to produce the kind of adults that are going to be able to contribute back into their economies, invest in others, because they would have reached self-actualization. So that's why the reason I do the work that I do is because the education space is one of the key components that will help a child achieve all of these components to be able to reach self-actualization. And so, and I feel like it has a domino effect in all of those other areas, you know, in health, in the justice system, in all of the other systems. So this is why I do what I do, is to make sure that our children are met with these basic needs before they become adults.
Yeah. And self-actualization is loving your neighbor. Self-actualization is loving your community, loving your country, loving yourself, loving your family, wanting the very best for people around you. And many times, if you have not been able to satisfy your deficiency needs, the first four needs that are part of the hierarchy of needs, you will never get to the self-actualization. So yes, you'll look at people and say, oh, this person is special. They're so kind, they're so nice, and perhaps they don't look like you. It's because they've been self-actualized, my friend. It's not magical. This is a proven model. This is a model, it's scientific. If you are able to reach up to that level of number 5, the top tier of the pyramid, you will be self-actualized. And no one has been able to do it without the support of the basic needs, right? You need those. So there's a high price to pay. You know, if you do not do it, right? The high price is the community chaos that we've seen, the violence and the crimes. When the community leaders and policymakers and government officials, people who are in power to make a difference, to create policies that could help folks climb up the ladder. If they've decided that they will marginalize some and keep some away from being able to achieve those goals, there will be consequences, and it's gonna be very costly. So yes, I will encourage everyone tonight to think about what you're doing to get to that point of self-actualization, and what can you do to help your community as a collective get to that point, and what can you do to demand that the people are in place who can create policies, who can write policy that could help you sustain those different levels, do the work that they need to do. So yeah, community matters. And yes, the Maslow hierarchy of needs matters. So thank you so much for your time. Please tag, share, tell your friends that we are here every Wednesday. And this show here is self-actualized. We're doing this show because we feel like it's very important to share these ideas, because many times we're hearing the concepts that are being spread out there, and they're erroneous because they're not based on scientific models like the Maslow hierarchy of needs. So it's very important that you let your friends know that we are here and that we are sharing the concept about money, but money encompasses everything, and understanding the Maslow hierarchy of needs matters. So thank you so much. Please tag, share, and make a comment, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And Angel for being on the show. You guys are great. Please do come back again and again. Okay?
Thank you so much. Have a great night.